Hey everyone, welcome to After number 72.
Hello, everybody.
Michael, how are you today?
I'm doing good. Doing really well, thanks. Doing
Excellent.
good. How about yourself? Doing well?
Yeah, doing really well. And we share actually with everyone here that we have been talking about modifying the Sleep Coach School a little bit, meaning making it just one offering, whether you want to become a coach or you have trouble sleeping yourself, make it just one membership actually with multiple courses within, with weekly sessions that we alternate, etc. And I think it's going to be really good.
Yeah.
And
I'm really excited about that.
I probably soon will start creating those course videos and whatnot. Well, that said, let us jump in and ask some questions. Mm-hmm. Answer some questions. I mean,
yeah, we may have questions too. You never know.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, here we go. We will start with this short question actually from Carolyn, and this came in via Facebook. So recently I started having trouble sleeping because of some digestive issues. I've been feeling a bit bloated, so it's been causing me to have trouble breathing and sleeping. I'm wondering if CBTI is worth it if I have another condition. If so, what should I do for the first week? What do you think of this, Michael?
Okay, so I'm just reviewing it real quick here again. So, so some digestive issues, bloated causing okay. Clearly with when it comes to sleep, that you got to remember that anything can affect your sleep. Literally anything. And so if you feel like there's some other thing going on with your health, then you of course just want to address it. So that's the first thing. But then if you feel like any other thing you have is kind of under control to a degree, then I don't see any reason why not to do CBTI if you feel like you're struggling with your sleep and it's kind of an ongoing issue. So the first week I would say try a sleep window, something reasonable, and then really stick with it and see if you can notice some effects. That your sleep drive is getting stronger and falling asleep's easier and not awake as much at night. So I would just proceed as long as you feel like the other condition isn't, so uncomfortable where, you literally are having lots of trouble, just kind of functioning. Then that would, you want to focus on that, of course. I think, maybe before you start your CBTI. But if you feel like it's kind of reasonable, at least it's under control. That's, I guess, the phrase I like to use. Just kind of under control. I would say I don't see a reason why not to do CBTI.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I should say to you, Carolyn, and everyone else out there that nothing here is medical advice, just me and Mike to share general thoughts for anyone in this situation like Carolyn. But I have to say the same thing. Like if you have like these obvious digestive issues and you haven't slept well, then maybe it's not the time to jump into like a program. Maybe just like see how that goes. And if you're feeling better with the bloating things going, then that was it, But on the flip side of this, for anyone that has both, let's say, pain or bloating, and you had a long struggle with sleep, like it's an ongoing thing, then there's no reason not to do CBTI or another like program like that. It's it can only help. Yeah. So Karen, like any follow-up questions, let us know. And with that said, we will move on to, let's see, what comes up. Yeah, this one. So Michael, remember, this is Ricardo from Portugal.
Yep.
And for those of you who have are tuned into like all our episodes, Ricardo. I feels like I know Ricardo. But briefly here, during the lockdown, Ricardo was in Portugal, had a lot of trouble sleeping, and eventually got to England and started sleeping better. And that's kind of where we are now, so to speak. So let's read the next episode here from Ricardo. And thanks so much for staying in touch, of course. Hi, Daniel. Glad to see your channel is growing. Happy to see that. So are we. I would like to share my development with you and hear your thoughts. I haven't had problems falling asleep. Great. It usually happens very quick. When I get to around 10 p.m., my sleep drive is really big. I try to go to bed around midnight, but sometimes I can't help but go to bed before as I'm so tired. The problem for me right now is waking up 3 to 5 hours later. After that, I rarely can go back to sleep. Getting out of bed is something that I haven't been doing much, as I don't find it pleasant at all. The first couple hours in the day, I struggle as I feel tired. After that, I usually go through work fine, but once I finish around 6 p.m., I feel tired and kind of always wish that bedtime comes quick rather than living the rest of the day without much thinking. I think that the idea of, am I doing this right, still lingers in my mind. I can't help to think, am I going to bed at the right time? Or should I leave the bed more often? How can I improve? I like that I fall asleep quickly and can sleep something every day, but I'm still not at a point where I have total restorative sleep and can't help to think about it. Thank you. So I can go first here, Michael, and say, the message here from Ricardo is a common one. It is, in the way I see it, like big picture, is someone had a lot of trouble sleeping, started learning about sleep, kind of understanding it. It was demystified, starting maybe spending a little bit less time in bed, started sleeping better, but still having a bit of a struggle, kind of tired during the evening, waking up at night, kind of struggling going back to sleep, etc. And here's the thing though, my biggest kind of tip or advice here is, you are doing it right. You are seeing things are going in the right direction. So the big picture thing here for me is, just keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing, and more good things will come to you. It's always like, it's very tempting. We're all humans. We all want to, we're doing better. Now we want to do even better. What can I do to do even better? Oftentimes the best thing to do is kind of like, just do what you're doing. Just do what you're doing. The paradox of sleep, or the paradox of sleep is, I'm writing a little bit of an article on this as we speak here, but we all, you'll agree with me, Michael, that we say that the more you want to sleep, the less sleep you get. That's also true for progress, in a way that the faster you want progress, the longer it takes. The more you're accepting with, it may take forever, the faster it actually goes.
Yeah.
So I have some more thoughts, but I'll let you in here, Mike. What do you think?
Well, it's like the old saying about, the pot of water boils faster if you ignore it. If you're anxiously watching over it, it seems to take longer. And there's all kinds of examples. That's just kind of an old one. And so, yeah, you got to remember that, you're making progress. He's definitely made progress, and you have to reflect on that, in a positive way. And, think about where you've come from. You've come a long ways. I think I would maybe speak just briefly, specifically about the waking up in the middle of the night. Ditch the clock. You don't need to know the time, obviously. And then also make sure, I think he commented, he doesn't like to get out of bed. And most people don't, let's just be really honest about that. No one likes getting out of bed in the middle of the night. It's not necessarily an enjoyable. You go from the most comfortable place in your home, your bed, you spend a lot of money on it and make it perfect for sleep and all this. It's the most comfortable place. You go from there to your couch or something, which might be comfortable, but it's not the most comfortable place. So, and the house is cold and dark and all that, so I kind of get the negative side of leaving the bed. So what I will sometimes do with a client is I would say, there's sort of different levels for this whole stimulus control side of CBTI, leaving the bed. And often it's for a mobility issue, but sometimes just for other reasons. I say, instead of getting fully out of bed, what about just sitting up in bed? Turn on a little lamp next to your bed and do some reading or something like that. Just something you enjoy, and not actually completely get out of bed. If getting out of bed is so problematic that you're gonna just lie there and keep trying to force sleep, you're doing the conditioning thing. And so, first and foremost, we don't want anyone to do the conditioning thing in the middle of the night, staying in the sleeping position with the light off, trying to force yourself back to sleep. That just leads to long-term issues. So maybe sitting up in bed is a kind of a happy medium instead of actually fully getting out of bed. I would chat with Ricardo about that a little bit if that might be a thing. But back to kind of the big picture that you were talking about, 100%. You're making great progress, and just keep doing it. You know, if you're falling, I can't remember what you say. He's falling asleep quickly, I think now.
Yeah, exactly.
The start of the night, grant yourself another 15 minutes, maybe go to bed a little earlier. You know, if you're falling asleep easily and you're not struggling with that, and you feel like maybe you're like kind of teetering on that, you know, sleep deprivation side of things, as you know, along with the insomnia, you know, maybe if falling asleep's not a problem, I don't see a problem going to bed a little earlier if it gets you like a little more sleep, maybe feeling a little better during the day, that sort of thing. But as far as being awake at night, it's normal to be awake at night. And, you know, if leaving the bed isn't the, you know, the most, it's not your cup of tea or whatever phrase you want to use, maybe sitting up in bed and doing something you enjoy for a little bit is a better option.
Makes perfect sense. Just like you don't have to get out of bed, you just sit up, and that becomes a break from trying to sleep. Perfect. And yeah, I think also, you know, I think what Ricardo may be doing here is like really trying to make it up till midnight to kind of force that sleep to happen. And, you know, I do believe oftentimes spending less time in bed is helpful, but it can also lead to pressure. And so, and then when you hear this, or anybody else hears this, may think, well, if Ricardo would go to bed earlier, wouldn't he just wake up even earlier then? I think the opposite might happen, because if you actually like less pressure, you go to bed earlier, you feel less pressured, and you just, you know, actually the opposite might very well happen.
Yeah. And we often talk about not trying all kinds of things. Don't do a bunch of experimentation. But when it comes to your sleep schedule, I think a little bit is perfectly fine. If it's trying to, you know, you're trying to dial in your physiology, okay, that's not like you're trying things like I'm going to try a different
outside stuff,
pillow and stuff or whatever. You know, it's like, you know, adjusting your schedule to fit how you feel, you know, is something you should do. So yeah, I totally agree with those comments.
I want to sneak one last thing in here, which is you know, Stasia Stevens, who I like a lot. She writes in, I don't know which of her book it is, but she writes this. She writes something like this, like, when you are asking me, am I getting it right? You're not, because you're asking if you're getting it right.
Right.
You know, that's our whole point, that try to just step away from it and say, I've been doing better, and I'm not going to question what I'm doing, or like really try to figure out if I'm doing right or not. And good things will happen to you for sure.
Yeah.
Perfect. Let's continue here. And I think we have one more kind of shorter one, and then maybe a longer one here. No, this is a longer one that came in from Stasia. Let's read this. The title was Acute Severe Postpartum Insomnia. Hi there. I just discovered your channel, having found myself at an all-time low. A little background. I've always been a great sleeper for 29 years, 8+ hours every night. Could fall asleep, no problem. Never even thought about my sleep. I never even pulled an all-nighter. I would get too tired. Even in my third trimester with the baby kicking, I was out each night and would only wake once at 3 a.m. to pee. This all changed the moment I went into labor and delivery. My baby got an infection during labor, which kept me up, but I think I slept a bit even then. Had an emergency C-section, and it was all downhill sleep-wise from there. I remember sleeping only once at the start of the hospital stay, waking up, choking on mucus, which was traumatic. And then I got high blood pressure related to delivery. I would enter the state where I would lay down drained to the bone and feel my limbs get heavy. Even my eyes start to move, feeling a blackness sink and take, but I could hear anything and still control my breathing. I could lay like that, sinking in deeper into that state. And then suddenly my heart rate would pick up, and I would almost jerk awake 40 to 45 minutes later. It was always 40-minute chunks. Baby delivery was, of course, traumatic, and everything that came after was too. I was starting to feel like I would never sleep again. They gave me Benadryl, just made me fall over, mind flashing with images, but still hear and breathe, just move, become physically tired. Same thing with Ativan. Finally, on the 8th day of the stay, Ambien knocked me out for about an hour, and my mother called me down with a leg massage, and I slept for maybe 3 hours, and then a 2-hour segment. I realized how tense my body was. I was in fight or flight, barely came down. Getting home, I would supplement with valerian root and somehow manage to start sleeping in pieces 1 or 2 or 3 hours. Though I tended to easily go back to sleep, I would be awake just long enough to check the clock. Things were getting better, and others watched the baby. I even had a night or two where I slept 5 hours, then 3. Then I started trying to watch the baby and didn't fall back asleep one night at 4 a.m. And it was like I started reverting. Then I started adding half an Ambien on top of the valerian, upping the dose of that. Helped a while. I would still sometimes wake up with my heart racing or so. Doctor put me on trazodone. Again, things were better for a moment, but it's 2 weeks and my sleep has gotten worse by the night. Last night was the worst. Trazodone only putting me to sleep for maybe an hour. I guess my question is there hope to improve my situation? I know it's more complicated than one thing, but being so low makes it hard to even see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm super sleepy throughout the day, almost passing out, but never out. Sometimes just laying still for 1 hour at a time because I have no energy right now. Hope to hear your thoughts. All right, I want to say, Stasia, it's one of these emails where you really, you can feel how much impact trouble sleeping has here. But yeah. Overall, Michael, what do you think when you hear this?
Well, clearly the childbirth is, kind of the start. And, there's a lot of, hormonal changes and things that we can't really speak about here. So, you just want to make sure that you're progressing on that side of things. As far as sleep goes, a lot of different meds, but none of them put you into natural sleep. And they all have side effects, and they don't put you to sleep. Your sleep happens on its own, and so it's easier said than done. I know that's probably what you're thinking when you hear me say that, but you really want to try to especially probably where you are with a newborn child, your sleep is probably going to be broken up quite a bit. There's feeding schedules and changes and naps and all that kind of stuff. So to think that you're going to go back to sleeping how you were before you had a child, at least for the time being, might be unrealistic. And so I think sleeping maybe in shorter segments over the course of 24 hours might be more practical at this state. That's kind of my thought. Other than that, you want to, associate the bed with sleep. So, you don't lay down in bed unless you feel pretty sleepy, and don't, as soon as you start to fight it, you got to do something else. You don't want to lay there and struggling, trying to force sleep, because it won't work. And it just makes things worse. But if you can catch, short periods of sleep, almost like napping off and on for now, I think that's probably going to help you feel the best while you're awake. And then as things start to stabilize, like with infants, brainwave patterns, it takes about 6 months before the circadian stuff starts to kick in and all of that with an infant. And so, in the beginning, you're kind of just, I don't know, call it survival mode sometimes. You're kind of just getting some sleep where you can. Make sure you have a good support system, sounds like you do, and try to, allow yourself those shorter segments to get some sleep. Don't worry about how long it is, how short it is, or anything with time elements. Just get that out and just try to get some sleep when you can. Try to help you as a pediatrician, Daniel, know more about this. It's trying to get a newborn child kind of on a regular sleep schedule. So you want to do certain things, your doctor's working with you on that to try to help get your newborn kind of on a regular schedule of some sort with feeding and all of that.
Yeah, certainly. I think just on the last page, the way I think of it when it comes to like sleep in kids, like it's actually, I think it almost more like in acceptance there. In the first, I don't know, several months, I think it's very little you can do actually to regularize the baby sleep. So it's almost more like what you said, that you have to be accepting that, yes, sleep will be pretty interrupted for a while now for this outside source that you actually don't have control over. So I think that's a really tricky thing in this for somebody who has a newborn child, is that you actually truly have in this case lost control over sleep to some extent, because you can't control your baby and your baby needs you. So an acceptance approach there is very important. But I think also, I don't want to miss to say this, that there's absolutely hope, Stasia, absolutely. Like, yes, now there may be hormonal changes, there are outside changes, all kinds of things going on. But at the core of it, you're still the same human being. You're on the same planet. You're breathing the same air. Nothing has really changed except this experience. So there's zero reason to believe, absolutely no reason to believe, that you won't be sleeping just as well as you did before this happened in maybe a couple of years, because kids wake up a lot. But the thing is, there's 100%, there's hope. There's hope for everyone. Absolutely, 100%. And I think also more big picture here, how insomnia develops is really it's really a classic story how insomnia develops. Meaning, you sleep well, then there's a trigger, and that trigger is real. It does cause sleep disruption. But then when we react to that trigger by saying, oh my gosh, something's wrong with my sleep, I got to get this right, I'm going to try it, then that desire to sleep creates more trouble sleeping. It increases the desire for sleep. And that's like, you have this insomnia spiral. And I didn't realize until I started actually coaching on my app as a coach there, how common it is that having a newborn baby is a trigger. And I think that's because I don't see people like you, Stasia, you don't have time to go to the doctor and talk about your sleep. You have so many other things to do. So I just want to say that it is super, super common actually to start having real trouble sleeping after you become a mom. And that's nothing strange or unusual about it. So I would say that that's actually the number one for me. I would say nothing strange or unusual. I would say if you have time, spend time on this channel and like learn about insomnia, learn what happens. And when it becomes demystified, when it's not strange to you at all, that is such a relief. I want to say with medications that, if somebody has no conflict about them and takes them every same time every night, then they don't cause too much confusion and unhelpful thoughts. So that works. Or you don't take them at all. I think that's the best. Experimenting that just leads to a path of confusion. And I think those are my big picture thoughts here, Stasia. And so hope this helped. There's absolutely hope for everyone. And let us know.
Yeah, hang in there. You're going to be fine. It's just newborn child. It's
brutal.
It's been a while since I've had a newborn child, but I remember, and you kind of just hang in there, and everything's different. But one thing I learned, and my wife and I learned, was that, just when you think everything is like on a schedule, a pattern, things change. Yeah, when you have a newborn, it just changes. Like as soon as you think, okay, yeah, we'll do this and this, and we'll do this every night, and then like the next day or night, it's different. Everything just kind of keeps changing, and that's just life. So hang in there. It's not like Coach Daniel said, you didn't like lose your ability to sleep. It's still there, but right now it can't really like manifest. It doesn't like get through because you have this other big thing going on. So just hang in there and try to enjoy it. Enjoy the time that you're awake with your child. I mean, what an amazing experience, and just take it all in.
I'm as you can imagine, like I'm a board certified pediatrician and sleep specialist. So, and still I was up with my kids until they were at least like 3.5 or something like that. Oh my gosh, it was brutal. But anyway, Stasia, hang in there.
You'll be good.
Okay, so let's see here. We're good on time, and let's talk about this one. I think it's a really good one, a little bit different from many other questions we have. It's from Dustin. Title of this email was Sleep Issues, Waking Up Multiple Times. Hey Daniel, found your channel on YouTube. You have a lot of great content. Thank you. That's thanks to people who are sending questions, really. I was wondering if you had a video specifically about waking up multiple times throughout the night, but going back to sleep relatively quickly. I'd say on average, I wake up 5 times a good night to 10 times throughout the night. Typically, I roll over and then fall back asleep within a few minutes. I typically have a variety of vivid dreams I at least appear to wake from and then drift back into. I'm in my late 30s now, and I have experienced this sleep state since my early 20s. I'm worried about my long-term health as a result of my extremely interrupted sleep. Any insights would be greatly appreciated. Now, I think this is one of those times where I want to say I don't go into immediate like insomnia coach mode, and I think you'll agree with me here. We talked about this before, Michael, but I want to say this, that insomnia really is this kind of struggle with sleep. Like you're wanting to sleep, but you can't. So when you wake up, you typically really become aware of being awake, and then you wake up completely, and then you're up for a long time, and you kind of try things, and it never. And so when somebody has this like multiple shorter awakenings, like you wake up, but you don't really necessarily react too much to it. You wake up, that's kind of annoying, you fall back asleep, you have a dream. That to me is something like, maybe there's something else going on here. I would say to anyone that says this, that before going full blown into like, okay, this is insomnia, I'm gonna do something about insomnia, I would say this is one of those, like, definitely talk to your doctor and see, like, sleep apnea, of course, is a common reason for fragmented sleep. So I think those are my big picture thoughts here.
Nothing else to add. That's exactly right. Talk to your doctor about your sleep and see about getting a sleep study, because that frequent awakening pattern, that isn't like a classic insomnia thing. People give it that label, insomnia. I have trouble sleeping, I have insomnia. Nah, it's not necessarily the case. It's got to be like what Daniel said. It's, you're struggling with it. You become awake and aware and alert very quickly, and it tends to go for an extended period of time, or sometimes at the start of the night. Either way, it's more of like a struggle with sleep. It's not frequent, brief awakenings or, other strange experiences, if it's breathing or dreams or anything like that. A sleep study can kind of help uncover some things that might be causing that. So definitely talk to your doctor.
100%. And I would say then, it's not impossible that this is insomnia, but again, talk to the doctor. And I want to say, if you, Dustin, find out that, oh, actually, there's absolutely nothing else going on, then come back, ask us some questions, and we'll go from there. But that's exactly what I thought too.
Yeah.
So I think we have time then to actually look at the last email here. This is from Salima. She sent the question a couple of months ago, I think, and now comes back with a follow-up. Hello, Daniel. I'm so sorry I'm replying so late. I got so caught up with a move to a new apartment that I completely forgot I'd sent you an email and that you have responded through a YouTube channel. And I will take a quick break there and say that actually makes me really happy, because that means you were not like obsessed about sleep. You had other things going on. You forgot about it. That made me just happy. All right. I'm so very sorry. Not at all. I just watched the video and I found it so helpful. Thank you for the elaborate explanation and concern. It calmed me down a bit. I have been sleeping better now because I try not to care as much, but the occasional hiccups are still there. Another question I have is, it's been 2 nights since I started feeling this looming dread right before I go to sleep. As soon as I'm a little sleepy, I suddenly get occupied with so much dread. Last night, I was completely good until I was super sleepy and got into bed and sort of started to snooze off with the podcast playing in the background. Then I was suddenly woken with this terrible dread, and I felt like I was going to die in my sleep. It was horrible. I then didn't even want to sleep. This can also be because 4 years ago, a very dear cousin of mine who was completely healthy passed away at night and was found dead in the morning by his parents. Oh my gosh. To this day, due to our medical investigative systems being lousy, we never found out what happened. That ruined my family, and being very close to his parents, I saw how they deteriorated so bad. They barely ever had a good time now. Since then, I developed the fear of dying and leaving my parents alone, especially because I'm an only child and very close to my parents, and vice versa. That fear has manifested in other ways, but never at night, or at least never in a way that would make me fearful going to sleep all of a sudden. Maybe this was instigated by a tension headache that I almost always consider a brain tumor. Okay, but I was on edge the past 2 days. There was a LOL there. That's why I'm laughing. I've been going to therapy, but so far not found a therapist that has been very helpful. But that was just some hindsight. My question is it normal to feel dread before bed? And is it normal that when you feel a bit ill, the dread before bed increases? I suppose the answer that would be yes, especially for someone who's constantly scared of dying, but I have never felt this way before. Sleep anxiety is regular, but not as much anymore. But feeling borderline somnophobic is not common for me. I don't enjoy it at all because I love sleeping. LOL. I've considered the BedTyme app, but I don't have the money. Oh yeah, of course. I'm happy you're here. Anyway, I love a response, whether it's through email or video. Many regards. Thank you as well, Salima. Okay. All right. Well, what do you think, Michael?
Yeah, that's a challenging question. That's given the background. One of the questions was, is it normal to feel dread before falling asleep? I'd say no, it's not necessarily normal, but it's possible, of course, and you're living proof that it's possible. So, what can you do? Well, I think like if you have a trauma or something that you perceive as kind of a life traumatic experience of some degree, whether it happened to you or someone else, but it really affects you, whatever it is, get some talk therapy, talk to someone. And it doesn't have to be a counselor per se. It could be a good friend, a family member. Just talking openly about things that happen can kind of help settle the mind a little bit. That I think that's always just generally good advice for almost anything in life. I think that's not done enough, honestly. That's my opinion. As far as sleep goes, I'm kind of a purist. And so when I hear like, oh, I'm listening to a podcast to fall asleep, or I'm watching TV to fall asleep, I'm kind of not a fan of that. I try to encourage people to explore not relying on anything, even like the ocean wave sounds and all that kind of stuff, because people tend to, like with the ocean sounds, they get sick of it, and then they're trying to turn it off, and it's like, or they know how long it runs, and then it turns off, and they're like, okay, well, that was an hour. I know, because I know that thing was an hour. So trying to go like kind of not relying on anything. Make sure you're like, doing enjoyable things before you go to bed, maybe something creative before you go to bed, and really kind of get absorbed in something that's really something that makes you feel good. Whether it's a certain type of reading material or listening to something, but all kind of like before you go to bed. And then when you go to bed, just tap into your own creative mind and, visualize, do the ocean sounds in your own mind or whatever you want to do. It's like, it's theater of the mind is what they call it. So I think that's maybe something worth exploring, to, be in maybe a more creative, peaceful kind of state when you go to bed. And you don't have to worry about like the podcast and like dealing with all that. So then in bed, then you just, if you start to struggle with sleep, try to be really indifferent and just kind of leave the bed and go back and do something you really enjoy. That kind of, start of the night process might help reduce some of that, that struggle you're having in the beginning of the night.
Yeah, I think just so I don't forget to comment on the podcast thing, I think I totally agree that whenever you do something with the intent of like that, if you hope that will make you sleep, that always tends to backfire. But on the other hand, if you enjoy listening to podcasts as you're about to go to bed, I am not as much as Michael, so I'm like,
we're all different.
That's fine. Exactly. But that said, I want to sneak this one in here too, which is a lot of people then go like, so what should I do? Is this better or that? Well, I think it's, when you're thinking, should I do X or Y? It's often not, you can do either. Just don't ponder if you're going to do X or Y. Like that's, the one, should I do this or should I do that, can create a lot of frustration, but just pick one and stick with it. It'll be fine. But then I want to say also, like the way you describe, and by the way, Tracy, I see the question, and we'll get to that in a second. Live question here. Yes, if you've had a little trouble sleeping in the past, and you have a cousin who died in their sleep, and for unknown reasons, and you start even just thinking about that as you're going to bed, of course that can cause you to feel stressed and anxious and have trouble sleeping. I don't think that is strange at all. Just as you point out yourself, and then maybe you're sick a little bit, and then you wonder, oh, I'm feeling sick, maybe I'm not going to sleep, and you think about your cousin and all that stuff. Of course that could make you have trouble sleeping. I think it's very common. I've heard many stories of, for example, I slept great, and then one time I was about to fall asleep and I had a jerk, and now I'm afraid of falling asleep, things of that nature. Very, very common. And so I think there's nothing strange or unusual about that. And I think that's important. Number two, I think it is, getting to a place where you sleep well is really always about acceptance and not resisting things. So when let's say you go to bed and you start thinking about your cousin, if you then go like, oh no, I'm thinking about my cousin. How can I stop thinking about my cousin? I don't want to do that. Then you become even more preoccupied with that, and the desire not to think about your cousin creates more problems, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's always about like not judging and accepting whatever thoughts, whatever happens. So if you go to your bed and you start thinking about your cousin, then don't try to resist it. Just be like, yes, I'm thinking about it. It's natural that I think about it. It's nothing strange that I think about it. And when you don't resist it, when you kind of let it flow through you, and I think you'll sleep really well, Salima.
Yeah, I agree.
And also, you get caught up with that move last time and you didn't think about sleep. And I'm sure that was beneficial too. So if you can do that quantum leap and just go into a place of like, forget about this, dismiss this whole thing and just do enjoyable things, that works great too. All right, so let's see here. Tracy has a live question for us. She says,
great.
I'm a 47-year-old woman that's been on medicine for 20 plus years for horrible insomnia since age 7. I sleepy, walk, and broken limbs, and had concussions from falls. Okay. My question is, what is there to do as my docs consider this low on the list of priorities? And I'm guessing, what is there to do? I'm guessing, in terms of the insomnia here. And by the way, I want to say thanks so much for this live question, Tracy. I want to say here, if I start here, that okay, whenever I hear that someone has had trouble sleeping for like 20 years, 30 years, then I think one has to acknowledge that it will take more work and a longer time to go to a place where you're sleeping really well with or without medications. And why is this? Well, I think it is because if I imagine somebody, let's say in clinic, for example, that says, I've had trouble sleeping for 30 years, and then I start talking about how it's really all like, it's your thoughts more than anything that produce insomnia. It's not about anything else. I explain like sleep physiology. Then if you've had trouble sleeping for 40 years, that can seem like you have so much evidence that contradicts what I'm saying that it can be really, really difficult to even consider what I talk about, So I think that is really the challenge when it comes to having trouble sleeping for so many years. And by the way, it's the identity thing too, that when you've had trouble sleeping for like 40 years, being an insomniac, being somebody with trouble sleeping can feel like it's part of your identity. It's who you are. It's part of your personality. People in your friends and family members may be asking you how you sleep. They kind of expect you to have trouble sleeping. You may get some empathy from them, some sympathy, which is kind of a secondary benefit sometimes of having trouble sleeping. It's not so. Those two things, like the ingrained, entrenched, long-term unhelpful beliefs and thoughts and the identity, can make it a real challenge. So then, with that said, what should you do? I think, is there anything to do? Of course, there's always many things to do. And I would say, like, just my brief thing here would be like, when it comes to medications, I think it's good not to experiment. I think you can sleep, anybody can sleep well off medications, even if that seems completely insane for me to even say that. I believe that's possible, but I also believe it's not, there's no stigma in taking medications. It shouldn't be. And so I think if you take the same medication every night, the same time, and don't experiment with it, that will give you, that you will see that how you sleep doesn't really depend on that medication. And it will give you kind of you can start working on like thought work. And what I mean with that is really, I think always the key is education, like learning about insomnia. What is it? How is sleep regulated? Why have I had trouble sleeping? When there's less mystery, when you understand it, then things start falling into place. Yeah,
completely. Yeah, and I would start off with, find a doctor you like who will listen to you. And there are some medications, as we both know, that are associated with kind of they call it parasomnia kind of activity. Getting out of bed, eating, walking around. You can injure yourself, of course. So make sure you're not on a class of medication for sleep that might be doing that. Maybe, I don't know if you've seen a sleep physician, you might find one to talk about sleeping medication if your regular doctor isn't as well versed in sleeping medication. So I would clearly start with that. And then absolutely, when insomnia is ingrained like that for years, decades, it can be more challenging to kind of rethink sleep, because you have solidified in your mind how your sleep is, and undoing that, it can take a lot of learning, listening, and self-reflection, like how you think about things having to do with your sleep. It can take a while. So you have to be patient. You have to just take a really patient approach to this. And go and just kind of like, maybe you need to do a little research during the day about sleep, learn about it a little bit, how does sleep kind of happen, and, what's the circadian rhythm all about, and that sort of thing. Educate yourself and become kind of a little, like an expert to some degree in this field, because there's so much available. There's so much information out there now that, I like to joke, it's like you can learn anything, online. It's all there. But, be careful about researching, insomnia cures, because that's just this other rabbit hole. You don't want to go down that. But learning just a little bit about how sleep normally functions and all that, I think, can be helpful. And really look at your beliefs about sleep, and question them a little bit. Like it's normal to be awake during the night here and there. It's not normal to struggle with sleep, but it's normal to be awake a little bit at night. And just the knowledge of that, like people wake up multiple times during the night. It happens. People aren't supposed to fall asleep as soon as their head hits the pillow. It can take a little time to fall asleep. So, understand kind of the normal way that sleep happens, I think really helps with the beliefs about your sleep. And that in turn can lead to improvement in your sleep.
Perfect. Tracy, hope that was helpful, and stay in touch.
And, good luck with it. Hang in there.
Okay. Well, that said, I want to thank you, Michael. Thanks everyone for all the questions.
Yeah. Great questions, everybody.
And we'll be back next Friday.
Thanks.